Welcome everyone to our new episode of The Quad here in beautiful Jerusalem. Yes, behind me is actually real Jerusalem and not a film set, with my incredible co-hosts, starting over there from the right, Vivian Bercovici, former ambassador of Canada to Israel, lawyer, and has her own podcast, The State of Tel Aviv, Ashira Solomon, political moderator and commentator, and to my metaphorical left, Emily Schrader, human rights activist and journalist. So ladies, as usual, eventful weeks, ups and downs, highs and lows. But this week, actually, we decided collectively that we wanted to talk about something more positive, and that is Israeli resilience, because sometimes we don't realize because we're here, but in the eyes of people who come from outside, they really see a country that has been through incredible trauma and yet somehow extremely resilient, especially our civil society, who I believe have been literally carrying us through the last few months. They've been way more functional than the government. In many cases, they've actually done the job that the government should have done. And so today we want to talk about what Israeli resilience looks like in its good form and maybe sometimes in its not good form. So Emily, let's start with you. Where are you particularly impressed, because you've been up and down the country as a journalist and you've met different people. Where do you feel the real kind of, the real Israeli character of resilience is showing itself?
Well, you know, I was actually going to say today, I was going to speak about my trip to the northern border. And I do think that that's one area where I personally saw incredible resilience from a lot of our soldiers who are on the front lines. We're talking about people who are 18 to 22 years old, the majority of them. Of course, there's also reservists, but the majority of them are that age. They're there for a month and a half. Without cell service, without seeing their families, without internet. Like they have a pseudo base next to it, but the core of the base where they're actually getting fired on, you know, several times a day, that's not actually being reported very much in the media. They don't have anything. They don't really have signal or anything, and it's freezing. And we're only at the beginning of the winter.
And there's also a lot of kind of indecision, I feel, about the North, or maybe that's just my take, that, or they're not telling us everything that's going on up there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the army or the state but from a personal perspective, from, I guess, a journalist perspective, what I saw doesn't jive with what's being reported. I think it's significantly worse. There are a lot of violent events that are taking place that are not being reported, from, you know, rocket fires, mortar shelling, drone infiltrations. There's stuff happening every day. I would say more than 10 incidents per day, whether it be a rocket or a mortar or whatever. It's happening both from Syria and from Lebanon. Those are both of the borders that I visited. So it's a really, really hostile situation. And the vibe that I got from all of the soldiers and the commanders that I spoke to is that they're trying to delay as long as possible because of the winter. Yeah. And by the way, so is Hezbollah. Yeah. They don't really want to fight this in the winter either. So the consensus seemed to be that they're just pushing it down the road. They kind of want to deal with Gaza now.
They want to keep it low grade. Yeah. And so you were impressed by the resilience of those soldiers, just sitting there waiting.
But I didn't get to what I wanted to say, which is that I was thinking about it just the last few days, and we've had so many people like fly here from other countries, people who this is not what they do. They're not journalists, they're not activists, you know, actors. Some of them we had on this show, Brett Gelman, people who are not involved in this fight at all. And yet they have taken it upon themselves to speak about this issue. I don't think it's enough. I think there's a lot of people I've been disappointed by. But I do have to recognize that we've really seen more effort in the whole Hezbollah fight from many, many people who are doing very, very small things to very, very big things that, you know, we hear about on the news. And it does reflect, I think, the resilience of not only Israel and Israelis, but the Jewish people.
Amazing. And you're right. I think this conflict has woken up so many things in so many people, especially Jews abroad, when they understand, or they finally understood, like Brett told us, Ashira and I on the show last week, that, you know, he'd been sold, you know, lokshen, as you Ashkenazis like to say, Vivian. Where, I know that you've been involved with many different groups, of civil society groups, but where are you most proud of the resilience of Israel?
That's a tough one. And I'm just going to get to it in 2 seconds because I too was up in the north last week with a
They
delegation.
didn't invite us to the party. Thank you.
That's not a party you want to go to.
Delegation of current ambassadors. I was the only one from, the only dinosaur. And we happened to be there, it was on Wednesday, and it was the heaviest bombardment that they had.
The same day as me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
we weren't able to
like
get
to look for risk. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. My daughter wasn't pleased. I'm like, it's my life. You got to let me live it. But we ended up, I don't know, you got up to the border. Our group could not get to the border. We were kept in a basement. High value targets, I guess.
Take that as you
But I
may.
want to just throw this out, because I want to, devil's advocate, just kind of challenge some of the assumptions that you shared, because in my conversations both that day with IDF people and with a number of journalists in the days since, what I'm hearing is a lot of criticism, frankly, of the kind of way in which we seem to be, and our experts seem to be telling us, oh, it's fine. Hezbollah doesn't want a war until the spring. We don't want a war until the spring for a whole bunch of reasons. And there's a lot of mistrust now, because that's exactly what was being said about Gaza.
True.
And there's a lack of confidence, I think, institutionally, and certainly among the population in what is being said by experts, etc. So park that.
Well, especially because the population has been moved out of there with
Yeah.
absolutely no plan of when
Zero
they're coming
plan.
home. They have no
200,000
idea.
people.
It's almost, 250,000 is the
In
whole
total,
country, but
yeah.
up north it's about 100,000.
It's about 100.
Which, by the way, you don't hear anything about
You
the
don't-
ethnic cleansing or driving
Displaced
Jews out of their
people.
homes.
Yeah.
No, nothing about
But
that.
the worst thing is that they have no plan of when they get
'Cause there is no
home.
plan.
There's no plan.
Because there is no plan. And so, but back to sort of your question, and I'll finally answer it. It's really hard to pick because I think everybody is doing their bit. I've been astonished. I've been spending a fair bit of time with hostage families in the last few weeks, and spent the better part of Saturday at Kikar Hatufim, which is what we call Hostage Square in Israel, in Tel Aviv, which has become a kind of plaza, meeting place, comfort place, everything place. I'm just in awe of these people. I mean, they just are going through an agony that
Can't
is,
describe.
it is. We
Indescribable.
really do, I say this every week probably, but we really need a new vocabulary
Yeah.
to talk about these issues. And so do they. But they just kind of keep going.
Is there hope now with this new deal that is apparently beginning to shape up? Do they have hope that they could get there?
Look, the people with whom I've been spending time, that's all that motivates them and that keeps them going is that hope. Whatever little shard they can find in there. Not everybody, I think, is hopeful. I mean, I know that there are many families who have chosen to isolate themselves. And they're just, I'm sure, consumed with despair, grief, guilt.
Ashira, where have you been most impressed about the resilience in the civil society here?
I'm most impressed by the women in this nation. Like, the women here are remarkable.
That's true.
They are incredibly brave in the strength. I have two stories I want to share. One is is my teacher, my rabbinite. She was, there was a rocket coming over and the Iron Dome intercepted, but as we know, the shrapnel falls.
Yeah.
And she was outside, so she was trying to run to get away from it. She fell, she had scraped up hands, bleeding hands, everything. She still comes to our midrashah, to our seminary, teaches class with these scraped up hands, and I'm thinking like, go home. And she, and she's like, no, nothing is gonna stop me from teaching Torah today.
No.
And I'm like, wow, because I don't think I would be that person. The second story is of this woman from Sderot, our friend Chaya. She teaches the women dance.
Yeah.
And there's a woman there, she's a Yemen Jew. I forget how old she is. I think she's in her 70s, has 19 children. When I see this woman dance, I mean, with so much joy.
From Sderot, which has been through so much trauma.
And she's
They're not
twirling
gonna bring
around,
her
she's
down.
dancing, she's clapping, and I'm like, wow.
She had 19 kids. She could do anything.
Yeah.
God's sake.
And so what I love seeing here is that people are not just strong with their words, but they're strong in their actions. Seeing the mothers who don't have their husbands with them and they're raising 5 children by themselves right now because their husbands are off fighting in the war, and they're still hosting communal meals and volunteering, and they just don't have time, but they make the time.
I just want to add one thing to that, because I actually wrote an article this week where I interviewed some of the new immigrant olot mothers, people who have children who are in Gaza right now, or some of them on the northern border. And in one of the cases, one of the women I interviewed made Aliyah October 17th.
Oh, wow.
So she made Aliyah after the war started, and she has not one, but 2 children, one of them female, who are combat.
Wow.
And both of them are in Gaza. And I was shocked. I was shocked in my interview with her because she just has so much, like, inner strength.
Yes.
And she was saying, like, you know, yeah, of course it's stressful all the time, but, you know, I don't have any other option other than trusting that, like, okay, they're training for this. They know they have a mission. They have to focus on that. I can't be the one that's like, tell me what's happening. Are you okay? Yeah. Because it just adds more stress.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, like, I don't know if I could do that.
Exactly.
Especially, like, imagine your first month in Israel and your children are fighting a war against Hamas. I mean, it's crazy.
The stories in this country, I always say, it's incredible that we live in a country that when there's a war, people actually fly in.
Yeah.
All the reservists who are everywhere around the world, all the people who are on holiday, all the solidarity missions. Which country there's a war and people fly in?
Speaking
Only Israel.
The only one.
We have this little problem within the army where there's not enough equipment because there was 130% enlistment. So when I was in the north, one of the things all of the soldiers, literally all of them, and some of them have messaged me about it since, they were like, our helmets aren't tactical helmets. They're literally falling apart, like they showed me. So now I've been trying to raise a little bit of money for some of these units.
There have been so many people, including you, Vivian, raising money, bringing, the ceramic vests, bringing this. Are we not there yet?
Well, no. And I think that that's something we'll talk about in another episode in terms of...
The day after.
Well, we can do it before the day after, but the lack of preparedness, the fact that equipment, kind of reserve equipment for such a situation was unusable. There's a lot to be discussed there, but we probably should hang on for an inquiry or something until we talk about that. However, I do want to say, it's really remarkable that all those, so-called Sarvanim resistors flew in. They didn't even wait to be officially called up.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Exactly.
But it's a very Israeli Jewish thing. You fly in for a war.
I'm not doing reserve duty. Next day there's a war, I'm there.
Yes.
Not only that, they're paying, sorry El Al, but like extortionate El Al prices to get on the planes, which I had to pay too.
I know.
Because the only commercial.
I think all of us have had to do a little bit of this during this time.
It's really crazy.
In the U.S., they're crying about, if this person becomes president, I will have to move to Switzerland. Like, everyone wants to flee when there's tragedy, but here everyone's like, we're coming back to help.
Which is really incredible. And the people that I'm very impressed with, and I went down south a few weeks ago, are the farmers. The side, tragedy of this war, and I didn't really know this until I, started going down there, is that 60% of our fruit and vegetable basket comes from the south of the country.
I thought it was even higher.
About 60% is what I was told a few weeks ago by the people there. A third of the Thai workers ran off because one of them was decapitated, it was put on their WhatsApp. And we simply did not have enough people to go and pick the fruit and put the seeds in for next year. And they're doing so many things to bring volunteers. I'm involved with a group bringing missions from abroad, people coming and spending 2 weeks here. It's incredible.
To work, not for vacation.
They're coming and they're staying in, places they would not be staying in if they were coming here on a holiday. They're staying in kibbutzes, in kibbutz guest houses. And just the resilience of these men who don't even live now in the Yotef, but they schlep in every morning to make sure that their farms keep ticking over so that we don't end up paying exorbitant fruit and vegetable prices in the supermarket where already many products, the prices are going up because of the so-called distributors. But we could have a whole other show about the economic effect.
We'll get Rami Levy on.
Well, yes. I could bring him on, actually. He used to be a city council member in Jerusalem.
That would be fun.
Very interesting,
Yes, we'd have to bring a translator, but yes. Okay, so now we move on to our wonderful guest that we have on our show, Rawan Osman, who is an incredible woman, Syrian, German, Lebanese, and is here in Israel to launch a new platform for Arab young people around the world to ask any questions they want and basically to combat the myths and the lies against Israel and the Jewish people. So we're thrilled to have on our quad this week an incredible guest. We pride ourselves, right, Ashira, on our guests?
Yes.
Rawan Osman is an Arab Zionist. You don't find that every day, but she is a Syrian, Lebanese, German who grew up in the region and then moved around. And today is the founder of a new platform called Arabs Ask, about all the different questions of all of the myths and lies that, you know, go around the Arab world about Israel and the Jewish people. And you have such a fascinating story. So just tell us a little bit about your journey from the Bekaa Valley, which is north from us here. We're neighbors, essentially, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
To being an Arab Zionist.
Yes, you don't hear that every day.
No.
So I'm lucky that I broke out of the system that brainwashed hundreds of thousands, millions, I dare say. So my story, I was born in Damascus. My father is Sunni. My mother is Lebanese, Shiite. I grew up in the Bekaa Valley, actually, the heartland of Hezbollah. And I must admit that in my teenage, I liked them. I thought Hezbollah were heroes. They saved us whenever Israel attacked us. Up until in my 20s, I moved to France to study winemaking.
Oh,
By the way,
a good thing for a Muslim girl.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yes.
I wanted to open a wine bar in the old city in Damascus with a friend. He used to be, at least, a hotelier. So I moved to France, and by chance, it was a coincidence. I ended up in the Jewish quarter in Strasbourg, and I thought it's like the Jewish quarter in Beirut or in Damascus. This one had a lot of Jews.
Yes, because the quarter in Damascus is, you know, it's a
Deserted.
museum, no more Jews. Right.
Yes.
But this one in France did have a lot of Jews.
Yeah, fairly. Yeah, many.
Yes.
And I lived 200 meters from the synagogue, one of the biggest in the world.
Wow.
And I thought it's a museum because up till then, I had never seen a synagogue. And on the first day, I went across the street to the grocery store, and I was happy because I found all the ingredients I needed to cook. Little I knew it was a kosher store. And I realized that when 4 men entered the shop, and I realized they speak in Hebrew, and as I turned, they were ultra-Orthodox Jews with sideburns and the hats and everything. And I had a panic attack.
You'd seen the devil.
The enemy, I'm
Yes.
right there.
Right.
I left my stuff, stormed out across the street, ran up to my bedroom, locked the door, although no one was following me. And as I was calming myself down, because I was sweating, I couldn't breathe.
Oh my God.
And when I was calming myself down, I looked in the mirror, and it just hit me. I realized the absurdity of our reality. I had a panic attack because I was sharing the same space with Jews, with the alleged enemy, right? Although they hadn't looked at me, it was a mixture of hatred, but mostly fear.
Fear. It's all about fear.
And since then, having access to uncensored information in Europe, I revisited the narrative I was taught at school, by my parents, by my friends, the news, the professionals, who blame everything, all ills of the world, on Israel. I read the narrative that was omitted from my existence, the Jewish story, the Israeli version of the events, to realize that Hezbollah are not heroes. They were actually the assailants. And throughout the last 70 to 80 decades, Israel showed a lot of restraint, but this doesn't help. We couldn't avoid the many wars, could we?
No. Unfortunately, it's lose-lose here. You show restraint and the enemy sees that as weakness. You use force and the world sees us as oppressors. We can't win. So, okay, so you realized Jewish people weren't the devil. You started reading the narrative. At what point did you become a Zionist?
Yes, good question. I actually read privately and decided to stay in Europe to raise my son away from the Middle East. And I was minding my own business until millions of Syrians moved to Europe.
Right.
I was happy as a Syrian that they found refuge. However, I was really concerned because I know the amount of anti-Semitism deep-rooted, ingrained in their existence. And I was wondering, when Angela Merkel said, "Wir schaffen das," we will manage, I was thinking, I really hope she has consultants who will tell her what she's inviting to this country, to Germany. I was worried. And as, of course, incidents started surfacing, not only in Germany, I decided to go back to university to study Jewish studies and Islamic studies from an academic perspective. And slowly but surely, I fell in love with Judaism, but also with this country, with Israel. And this is why yesterday actually, I came here for the first time. Wow. I'm so proud to be here among people who teach us a lesson of resilience, of solidarity, of persistence.
That's so beautiful. We're so blessed to have you here.
And what are you doing here on your trip for the first time?
As Fleur mentioned earlier, after the 7th of October, I founded a project called Arabs Ask. I was so angry, still am, after I've seen what happened on Saturday, that wicked day. And although I hate social media, and my son says I live under a rock, I'm a dinosaur, I realized, especially watching the mobs on the streets in the US and in Europe, that our only chance is social media to reach all these people who actually believe Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Did they forget what happened on the 7th of October? Because I promise you, as a mom, when I saw the news, I thought of a mom in Gaza waking up to what happened. She knew exactly what these devils brought upon her children. And so Arabs Ask is one way for us to create short videos and debunk all the lies widespread, especially by my favorite TV, Al Jazeera. The harm they're doing.
What impact are you seeing with Arabs Ask?
We will start publishing after like second to third week in January. And I came to Israel because I think it's very powerful to start in Israel, especially as a Syrian Lebanese / German citizen, which allows me to be here now. It's very strong to start here from the forbidden land, because once you come as an Arab to Israel, you've crossed all the red lines. And I want to send that message because, as you said, Fleur, I am a Zionist unapologetically.
Do you really think, because we go in this program from hope, resilience, to sometimes feeling a little bit hopeless, that in the pit that is the social media world, where people obviously don't care about facts, not historical facts, there are people denying the Holocaust, you know that. How can we really make an impact? Do you think that there is that kind of moderate Arab mind out there that is saying, hang on, these things don't make sense to me, just like it didn't make sense to you once you met some Jews?
2 weeks ago, we were on a 2-week speaking tour in the US. Right. And we spoke on university campuses in New York, in Boston, in Atlanta. We spoke to many Jewish students who felt a lot of despair.
Yeah.
They were intimidated, bullied, depressed. And I'm going to tell you what I told them. I can't imagine someone during the Holocaust or after having any hope for the Jews. Still, the Israelis managed to establish a Jewish state. Let that resonate.
Yeah.
Let that sink for a moment. If that was possible, I believe the Jews are capable of doing anything. More so the Israelis, because they're not only Jews today.
That's right.
Together, they teach us
20% Arab population who are very happy to be here.
Absolutely. And together, they teach us a lesson of solidarity, pushing forward for a better future for all of our children. And what is the alternative if we give up, Fleur?
There's no alternative. This is why we soldier on. There's nothing, there's no alternative, but we still wake up in the morning sometimes and I want to see that light at the end of the tunnel.
With all that information, all this knowledge, all of the efforts that we do on social media, here on the Quad, we talked about a few weeks ago, like how Israel is failing in PR. From your perspective, what main message could we give into the Arab world that would really penetrate? Like what does the messaging need to be, because it's not working thus far?
It seems like it's not working because Hamas's propaganda is very effective.
Very.
Very. And with the help of Al Jazeera,
Of course.
it becomes even more
their
effective.
mouthpiece.
I mean, we say it's effective, but let's be careful. It's not very helpful, especially not to Gazan civilians.
Of course not. The way they don't care about civilians.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter whose side they're on.
But let that sink in for all the Arabs who are promoting this hatred, that they have blood on their hands. They are responsible for the death of the Gazans as well. They're helping Hamas directly and indirectly. However, I think Israel is doing a great job. We are outnumbered, it's true, but giving up is not a choice. It's not an option.
Right.
So we keep fighting, we keep debunking what's obviously BS. I think Hamas, they can deny, they can try to get out of it, but they shared what they've committed. There is no way out of what they've done, and they will be held responsible. And this is why Israel was pulled into this war, and I hope they will be able to dismantle Hamas to the last of the terrorists.
Rawan, inshallah. Thank you so much for being here. We are blessed to have people like you on our side who see the truth and who are not scared to tell the truth. It takes really a brave woman to come to Israel and do this, especially in the Arab world. And so we salute you and we invite you on our show anytime you're back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now for one of our most popular segments on this program, Scumbag of the Week. And every week we have so many to choose from. It's really incredible. I want to start with you, Ashira. Who's your scumbag this week?
My scumbag is Mark Lamont Hill. He is particularly just really getting under my skin. He's a liberal Black leader in the community. He's also Muslim. What irritates me...
Well, wasn't he on CNN?
Yes, he used to work
I
for
did
CNN.
not know he was Muslim.
Yeah,
I didn't know he was Muslim either.
He's Muslim.
Oh, I didn't
And
know.
so he particularly irritates me because he's been to Israel many times, he's been to the West Bank many times, and he continues to say, you know, Israelis are colonialist. And he knows the difference between colonialism and Zionism. One thing I will say I respect about him is that he is willing to go onto other platforms, in Zionist platforms, and debate. So I welcome him to come onto our platform and debate his ideas.
I think he might feel we're going to lynch him.
Yeah. That was a good one.
But you go ahead and invite him on.
But I just feel like, you know, you're intellectually dishonest.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
get you.
really irritating.
Vivian, who's your scumbag of the week?
Well, speaking of intellectual dishonesty and lack of integrity,
Always a
nice
great segue.
segue. Nice segue. My scumbag of the week
She didn't even hear.
is I didn't hear.
I
What
said
did I
Trudeau.
go? I could, but I'm
let's
gonna.
shake things
He's a
up.
forever.
Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue. And my scumbag of the week is a former cabinet minister in the Likud party, Galit Distel Atbarayan, yes, I have to look at my notes to make sure I get it correct. She made a big show of resigning her ministerial position 4 days into the war. And she sort of, came out pretending that this was some kind of, attack of conscience, that she felt that it was her ministry, it was diaspora affairs, it was redundant.
It was Hasbara, public diplomacy,
Right.
and she claimed they didn't give her the authority.
So they didn't, I'm sure, because it's a chauvinistic government, and she was window dressing, and she should have known that. But then just recently, in the last few days, she's come out and said she sinned. I mean, so much drama.
Yes.
I sinned. I never should have said some of the things I did. I never should have supported that judicial reform stuff.
Well, she was a very divisive character.
And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, all right, Galit, you had the fancy luxury car and driver that a minister gets. You had the big office. You had the staff. You had all the other perks. You knew long before the war broke out. And the fact that you were being kind of sidelined and your responsibilities or supposed responsibilities were being given to men who Bibi preferred. Is that why you're why are you quitting?
Why now? Why?
Exactly. And you're quitting because you see it as a political opportunity, right? It's not about principle, because if it was about principle, you never would have taken the job in the first place.
That's right.
Right? All right. See, we're team on the end. So I just think
but I do have
grow
to say,
a spine and get some integrity.
I would agree with you, but I have to say, and Emily can wade in here, because Emily actually is the only person who interviewed Galit Distal in the 4 days between October 7th and when she resigned. And when she was asked on Channel 12 how many interviews I've done, she said, I did Emily.
Yeah.
Do you remember? So I find that interesting.
That's great.
I have to say that I was impressed when she did resign after 4 days, because from what I understand, they took all her authority and they gave it to Shikli.
Who's done so much. Oh, wait.
Exactly. So I did feel at that moment, look, the woman saw she had 200 million shekels, whatever budget they gave her. She said, send it to Gaza, send it to the Otef. I don't want any part of that. It's not you can't kind of completely wave that and said that was also opportunism.
Sure I can.
Okay.
I mean, it's total opportunism, because she wasn't really losing anything anymore.
Right. Or maybe the criticism was too much, that she wasn't doing Hasbara, that she thought, well, I'm not gonna win here.
I think actually both of you have a point. I think it's political opportunism. I agree with you on that. But at the same time, I don't really care, because the fact that we have someone who was in the government who was incredibly divisive, now saying that, okay, fine. It's good that someone's saying it, even though I don't believe her. I don't believe that she's genuine, or maybe she is. I don't know. I don't really care. But I do think it's good that someone is admitting what we all knew to be true before, that even if you want these kinds of reforms or whatever, this is not the way.
It's not
the way that the way that the government divided people before is awful. And I do place the blame on them for that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your scumbag this week. Emily, who's your scumbag?
So my scumbag this week is Bushra Sheikh. I think that's how
Okay.
you say her name. She is a British Pakistani type of journalist, I guess. I don't know if you can really call her a journalist.
Oh, I think she's come after me, yeah.
She is virulently anti-Semitic,
Yeah.
absolutely awful human being.
Right.
Seems like every day there's something else that's more awful than the day before. But the funny part about all this is that she is the, I believe, founder, if not CEO as well, of this British organization, a British Pakistani organization called Run Racism Out. Which is highly ironic, considering the level of hate that she is consistently spewing against Israelis. And I have just a few of the examples that I had seen. First of all, the pinned tweet on this actual organization's account, says that Israel pretty much did the October 7th massacre themselves in order to carry out a massacre of Palestinians. So we already have conspiracy theories. We have her mocking a sex scandal with Israeli prisons.
I saw that.
Absolutely vile.
Yes.
She just a few days ago said that Hamas showed the world what Israel tried to keep a secret. and that they're exposing the true colors of Israel. And on October 7th itself, she actually praised what had happened and talked about how it was such a great day. So this is a truly hateful person
And she's
to her
in
core.
the UK?
Yep, she's in the UK, she's on BBC all the time, she's on Talk TV all the time, a regular commentator. Of course, she's also on Iran's press TV all the time.
Oh, she's probably on their payroll. So Bushra,
She's a Hamas
Yes.
soldier.
Hamas soldier, and shameful that a woman who
I'm surprised she
roams
doesn't have an
free-
op-ed in the New York Times.
Well, that's probably
Next step.
You're probably helping
Yeah.
her get one right now.
Yeah.
So Bushra Sheikh is Emily's Scumbag of the Week, and my Scumbag of the Week is a guy called Bernie Steinberg, who used to be the head of Harvard Hillel. He was the CEO of Harvard Hillel between 1993 and 2010, who came out this week to say the Jewish organization or Jews on campus are weaponizing anti-Semitism. Like, is this man living under a rock that he doesn't see the anti-Semitism and the lack of dealing with it by the administrations of all these universities? Or is he one of those apologetic house Jews that feels if you put your head down, they're going to like you more? Bernie Steinberg.
I was going to say probably a house Jew.
Court Jews.
Court Jew.
Yeah, that's what I've always called them. He kind of made a big splash, and his son within Canada as well. And I'm wondering if he is Canadian, because he was all over social media in Canada.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if he's Canadian.
I'm not either, but I'm going to nail
for
that.
a Jew who was in charge of a Hillel to come out and first of all completely ignore the reality of what Jewish students are suffering in these campuses, and then saying that we're using that, it's like accusing a Holocaust survivor of weaponizing the Holocaust.
And we have Jews who do that too.
Oh, yes, we've got the Chomsky, and we've got a whole line of people like that. So Bernie Steinberg, good riddance to you. I'm happy you're nowhere near Harvard, even though the Crimson, of course, let you write this stupid BS article. You're my Scumbag of the Week.
Yeah.
And now, the lovely time of the show to actually say positive things and do positive vibes for our heroes of the week. So, Emily, let's start with you. Who's your hero of the week? Yes.
Well, I have to say that my hero of the week is Mia Shem, actually.
Oh, yes.
She is one of the girls who was taken hostage by Hamas on October 7th. She was held for a little over 50 days. She was actually I think she was the first hostage video that came out.
She was?
She had been shot or injured somehow in the arm by the terrorists, and they operated on her once she arrived in Gaza with a veterinarian.
Yeah.
She was kept in a cage. She gave her first interview this past week, a really lengthy interview, but there's even English subtitles, so everyone should watch it. I highly recommend it. It's important to understand the psychology and everything that happens to these hostages, some of whom are still there. But she spoke about how, she was being held by a family.
Yeah.
And
they were all involved, involved in the
civilians who were there. She said that, there were uncomfortable sexual situations, of course, that she wasn't raped. And the only reason she wasn't raped was because she was held in the house with the wife and children of, I guess, one of the Hamas terrorists. Who had tried to do things, but the wife hated her. So it was a very...
So a jealous wife saved her.
In a way, yeah. In a way, yeah.
Well, I saw the interview.
I
She's
can't
very
believe
impressive.
how strong she is.
And what is she, 22 years old?
Yeah.
And to be able to talk with such rationality about what happened to her and why these things were happening. And she said everybody's involved. The kids would go up to her and go, look at sweets, candies, and then they would take them away from her just to tease her. Oh, Lord. Okay, who's your hero of the week, Ashira?
My hero of the week is a fallen soldier, Ben Zusman. He was a 22-year-old sergeant. His letter that he left behind for his family was incredibly touching. I just have a few sentences of it that I want to read. He says, "Even if something happens to me, I don't allow you to sink into sadness. If I fall captive, I am not willing for a terrorist to be released in exchange for me. If I die, I hope it will be in defense of others and my country." And he talks about when you guys are sitting Shiva please have joy and make those cookies that you always made for me. It was so personal. I could even cry now. I just weep every time I read this letter. I've read it like 4 times already. But we're talking about resilience, and he was even resilient in death.
Unbelievable. What a wonderful story. Thank you for bringing that to us. He's your hero of the week. He sounds like everybody's hero.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ashira. Vivian.
Well, my heroes are all 15 judges of the Israeli Supreme Court.
Here we go.
Okay. Who issued their long-awaited decision on the legitimacy of the reasonableness law that the government passed in late July. That law constrained the ability of the Supreme Court to make decisions, to invoke certain doctrines. It very significantly limited its jurisdiction. And Supreme Court came out very divided. First time ever in the history. 8-7, all 15 judges sat. First time ever since the state was founded that the full panel of judges sat. Came out 8-7. And they're my heroes because they had a monumental and extremely difficult task. They were right up against a deadline because the Chief Justice is retired. And so any judgments that she participates in writing has to be released within 3 months of her retirement. So they were right up against the deadline. And what they showed us is, yes, this is very divisive, very important. And when you're going to make monumental, constitutional, institutional, foundational change to the way in which a state is organized and functions, you need to do this democratically. You need consensus, and it has to be done differently than it was. And that means, in my view, you either go back to an election and you get a mandate from the people, you run on that change as a policy, or you hold a referendum.
But Vivian,
and so they're my heroes.
Good for you. I question the timing. Like, I know you said they had to do it. No, they could have waited for the next.
No, they couldn't.
Why not?
Because
this is really what we need right now? More division in the middle of a war?
No, but I mean, I don't think that it's going to really kind of attract a lot of attention.
It has. You know that all the foreign news channels are now talking about this.
Well, they're talking about it, but there's not anything, nothing's going to be done. We're going to be in
there's no continuation.
State of suspension. There's nothing that's going to go on in the Knesset to deal with this. And I think that's understood. But no, there is no choice. There are rules, just like with budgets, that govern Supreme Court decisions, procedures, the way it functions, and you don't play with those.
Well, I think that if they would have rolled it out differently,
how?
It would have passed. I just think they just did it very...
Oh, you're saying if they would have rolled out the legislation?
No, I'm saying the reforms could have been done in a different way, and some of them would have passed because some of them actually are needed. But we're not going to get into that now.
No, but they didn't. And they did it
no,
like
it's a bunch,
how.
Like a lesson in life. It's sometimes
not
what you do.
What they did.
It's sometimes not what you do, it's how you do it.
It's interesting you say about referendum because I think the majority of people wanted some sort of change in the Supreme Court. I mean, Gideon Saar ran on judicial reform before, but he was against this. So it's just the whole package was the problem, and as well as the way that they did it. But I think that some reforms should be done at some point. I don't
think serious people are actually disputing that.
Yeah, but that's what the other side portrayed.
I don't know about that. The reform supporters portrayed everyone who didn't support those exact reforms as a radical, left-wing anti-Israel.
And the anti-reformists, also any reform was the death of democracy. That was also an exaggeration. Let's agree to disagree on the content, and one day
and your summation. Can we disagree on that too?
One day we will have a show, I promise.
A debate?
Dedicated, a debate. No, really, because it's an important issue, and I think we're all very reasonable people. And I think that we could probably, rule the country right from the studio over here.
Oh, there's no question.
So my hero of the week, I actually met this morning. It's a guy who lived in Kfar Aza, in the young people's quarters, which I actually went and visited a couple of months ago. And so I know exactly where the guy lived. And he told this story, this guy called Yuri Levin. He basically... They put his apartment on fire. He jumped out the window knowing there were 3 terrorists waiting for him outside his
Wow.
window. One with a gun, one with a knife, and one with something else. They captured him. He was literally in his underwear, no shoes. And they started taking him towards Gaza. But two of them left and decided to continue in the massacre. And the one guy who was with him, he saw he was less armed. And Yuri was a runner. And he just, at a moment, decided, if I don't escape, this is it for me. And he escaped. He ran. The guy couldn't keep up. This guy was a runner. The other guy couldn't keep up. Wow. He went back into the car park near where the young people live, which I actually saw. It was rubble, no shoes. His feet were destroyed.
Wow.
And he found a bush to hide under, shots all around him. He stayed there for 6 hours.
Wow.
And I met this guy this morning, Yuri Levine. He's my hero of the week. And talk about resilience.
He's mine, too.
I mean, to also have that moment of clarity in this panic and fear.
That's what adrenaline does.
And so we pray that our hostages come home between this episode and the next, and that we have peace in our region. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, everyone.